Hello, I'm Kendra Cook, your host for the DCTV Daily News program out of Dove Creek, Colorado, brought to you by the Dolores County Broadcasting Network with support from the Southwest Colorado TV Translator Association. That's the special district association responsible for bringing the area free to access TV stations over the air by antenna. This is a community TV station. If there's a news story or event information you'd like to share, contact us. The phone number is 970-677-4119. You can leave me a message or an email at dcbnnews@gmail.com. And if you're a business or organization, we welcome you to find out about sponsorship opportunities for banners run on the channel. This is the transmission for February 18th, 2021, DCTV Daily News. DCTV reports that newly elected Lauren Boebert, Republican congressional representative for District 3 here in Colorado, made some stops in Southwest Colorado this past week. On Wednesday the 17th, she met with Dolores County commissioners and a group of extended interested parties to discuss the most important local issues that are impacted by the federal level. Key at this moment is the concern over our water and the potential for a wild and scenic designation in place of the BLM management or an NCA locally managed to oversee the lower Dolores River area. The two counties that this affects the most, San Miguel and Dolores, continue to work together in this process to come to the best resolution, wherein the residents and counties can continue to have access to the river corridor and all of the resources therein without interference from a group wanting to restrict the Colorado citizens in many ways by declaring it a wild and scenic designation. The struggle has been ongoing for over a decade, and ultimately the concept of having an NCA in place will protect the county in the best way possible, that according to the consensus of our commissioners.
And without, when the dam went in, it really changed the natural, I'm trying to think of the correct word for, kind of like the cleaning up of the river, because when we had runoffs, it would flow, so it would scour the bottom of the river, and it would push out the cottonwood seeds, get them up on the banks, so you had, just a really diverse habitat along the way. You would have the fish in the Bradfield area. Farther down you had your long cottonwood groves, and all that was very beneficial to the entire habitat of the river. Well, now with McPhee, and every once in a while they get a good release, that scouring doesn't happen as much. So that's why we've seen the influx of like the smallmouth bass and some of the other predators. And it has changed some of the what they're terming endangered, but they're fish, but they're finding more and more of them as they study. Changes to the economy a little bit, because a lot of people like the rafting and the use of the river. I mean, Snaggletooth was what they call a level 10, and those of you who raft and get out, that's hard to find.
It's common with folks over there that want to reach into our district,
right,
and shut off our land and
right,
rivers, and that's part of the frustration that I was having, that we were underrepresented and it seemed like we were drowned out by liberals in Denver wanting to control how we live over here. So that's why I signed up for this.
Ms. Boebert was very attentive and mostly did the listening during this lunchtime casual meeting. She had been at the Montezuma County Board meeting the day before, and there's a video of that meeting available to view if you are interested on how they are looking at the whole water infrastructure and impacts across the board. There's a link to that on the DCTV Facebook page. Several other topics came up during her visit. From her stance against the introduction of wolves into District 3, there's state-level discussions, she said, on the possibility of not presenting the wolves into counties that voted against it, but that's probably a long shot. Interesting, it was also brought up that the local CPW agent, Matt Thorpe, had said that there would not be wolves released in Dolores County as we are so close to New Mexico, where there's a desire to keep the Mexican wolves separated. However, the information from the state level to the commissioners was that indeed they have plans to release them in our county. We will follow up as we find out more on that front. Other concerns brought up included the future of cattle in face of the Green New Deal proposals by congressional Democrats such as Representative Sandy Cortez and Agenda 21-2030. Boebert's specialists and staff members said that she was focused on agriculture and will be heading up efforts to protect Colorado's agricultural businesses and way of life. Boebert made a funny comment about the cows and Texas cold weather and the methane meme. According to the House website, Boebert is currently a member of the following caucuses: co-chair of the Congressional Second Amendment Caucus, House Freedom Caucus, vice chairman of the Congressional Western Caucus, ex officio steering member of the Republican Study Committee and Values Action Team. Also, our Sheriff Wilson brought up his objection to the legislation for a general public registry for firearms, which she also is opposed to. She described how many of the bills that are presented are works in progress. It's a balance of certain elements being taken out of or put into in order to come to some level of agreement where the bill then gets voted in. And of course, the oil and gas industry was brought up and how much the county is dependent on our natural resources and specifically the energy industry. Boebert is very dedicated to the support of what Colorado has been built on, the agriculture and energy. It was over an hour of back and forth discussion, again primarily for our elected officials to share their experiences and current concerns with Boebert and her office team. Being a tad ahead of schedule, almost unheard of for politicians, Boebert and her team then made a second stop in Dove Creek to visit with the Dove Creek school kids. Hopefully an inspiration on meeting a federal representative, getting to see someone firsthand who is reaching out to her constituents. The county looks forward to her following up on several of these issues and a working relationship with her office for the future. And now let's take a look at the local weather as we clear out of the snow but dive into the cold. So for the rest of today, Thursday, sunny with a high near 30 degrees with cold north winds around 10 miles an hour. Into tonight, mostly clear and another cold night, low into around 12 degrees with north winds continuing 5 to 10 miles an hour, but shifting to the southeast after midnight. For Friday, we're looking for a sunny day with a high near 36 degrees, south winds at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Friday night, partly cloudy and a low around 21 with south-southeast winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Now for Saturday, we're looking at a slight chance for snow showers before 1 p.m., slight chance of rain showers between 1 and 4, and then a slight chance of snow after 4 p.m. again. You get the idea. Mostly sunny, though, with a high near 42 degrees, with those south-southeast winds 10 to 15 miles an hour becoming west in the afternoon. But the chance of precipitation right now is sitting at about 20%, so it's still unlikely unless things change. For Saturday night, mostly cloudy and a low around 18 degrees. For Sunday, sunny and a high near 35. Sunday night, clear and a low around 17. For Monday, sunny with a high near 42. Monday night, clear and a low around 21. And for Tuesday, sunny with a high near 48 degrees. Tuesday night, partly cloudy and a low around 27. And now, back to our news. The Durango Herald published a piece on the census tract data and how that affects districting in the state and our corner. The U.S. Census Bureau is warning states that it may not provide the population data they need to redraw congressional and legislative districts until September 30th, more than 180 days late and after a deadline enshrined in the Colorado Constitution by which the new political maps must be drawn. The announcement on last Friday is a worst-case scenario for Colorado's new independent redistricting commissions. State officials were already expecting the data to be late but thought it might arrive by summer. The Census Bureau says it could have the data ready sooner, but nonpartisan staff members at the Colorado General Assembly tasked with overseeing the redistricting process are not optimistic. Colorado's congressional and legislative redistricting commissions, that's a mouthful, which are still in the process of being selected, must draw new maps by September 1st and September 15th, respectively. If the population data comes in later and no remedy is found, the commissions will be unable to meet the deadlines and nonpartisan legislative staff members will take the reins. The deadlines were set when voters passed amendments Y and Z in 2018. The amendments were placed on the ballot that year by a unanimous vote of the legislature after a much heralded bipartisan agreement aimed at removing partisan politics from the redistricting process, which is very important. The population data from the Census Bureau was supposed to be in by March 31st at the latest, giving the commissions months to draw the new maps. Nonpartisan legislative staff members in Colorado think they may be able to get the work done in 2 months, but it won't matter if the data arrives after the due dates. Quote, "This will be one of the first things for the commissions to tackle once they convene," said Jessica Shipley, a nonpartisan staff member leading the redistricting effort. "We're going to try to do all of our research in the coming weeks to give them as much information as possible so that they are well informed and can make a plan to go forward." By the way, Dolores County remains fully within the Congressional District 3 zone. And so many know I'm the manager of the tiny Dove Creek Chamber of Commerce, which, although it is structured as a membership nonprofit, we are not affiliated with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but we do communicate a lot with other chambers in Colorado and in our Four Corners area. That being said, it's interesting the U.S. Chamber just announced its support of the newly appointed head of the World Trade Organization, or WTO, a woman who is highly supported by the Chinese. How are the interests of foreign businesses and workers the priority of the American workforce and chambers who are supposed to be championing the small businesses across our country? I don't have an answer for that. The emphasis on the Chinese impact and influence on the United States politicians really makes you think about how that bodes for our local economies. Shutting down stores has made for permanent closure across the U.S. Here in Dolores County, we have not only had businesses remain open during the pandemic-related state restrictions, but we have had 2 food establishments actually open in this climate. The latest update on the local COVID, or actually coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 situation, is that our county of about 2,000 population may have reached a better sense of herd immunity, as the smattering of cases listed by the heavily challenged testing shows currently 0 active cases with a total of 66 recovered as of February 13th data, which this began basically about a year ago, back in February of 2020. As many people experienced some level of a type of flu, pneumonia, or respiratory illnesses over the past year and did not get tested or seek health care and recovered, and the average amount of deaths have not changed and have been not credited to COVID in our location, we're in a very good position to be healthy moving forward. They label us right now cold blue on the 2.0 meter, just 1 step up from the green level, which is the lowest option, as in no health crisis at all. But so many wonder, what does the future look like? Initially, it was just a couple of weeks, or maybe the season, don't need masks at all the way to suggesting wearing 2 masks or more just recently. And this continues to be driven by authorities extending the useful disaster emergency condition to enact a lot of extra health-related strategies. Well, on that topic, I was directed to look at the World Bank response document for the Project COVID-19 Strategic Preparedness and Response Program. Let me repeat, it's called a Preparedness and Response Program. And this was approved back in April of 2020. But the really interesting point is that the, quote, end date is scheduled for March 31st. 2025, yes, not to finish this whole program until another 4 years. Eek. So that conveniently runs into the beginning of the next U.S. presidential administration, if there is such a thing at that time. An article by Makia Freeman states that the SARS-CoV-2 virus that allegedly causes COVID has still, to this date, never been isolated. Countless governments and organizations worldwide have failed to produce evidence of its existence when challenged. The implications are that the world has been shut down and people's lives have been decimated over a lie and a superstition that could well be the biggest fraud ever perpetuated on humanity as a whole, she writes. The virus has never been isolated, purified, sequenced, characterized, and proven 100% to exist. Check it out for yourself. There are many people who say the same thing. Is this something that you already know, or is this new to you? The article continues to explain and give some sources on its points. So many do believe in this viral pandemic, but take a moment to question what is really making people sick versus what has happened year over year, with some years having very aggressive viral infections. The numbers are always subject to manipulation. It is worth your consideration comparing year-on-year data to make your own conclusion. The virus has never been isolated according to Koch's postulate or Rivers' postulates. Start with this because this is the cornerstone of the whole alleged scam, and this is science. All the following information and evidence below stems from the fact that the so-called experts have never isolated and purified the virus according to the gold standard of Koch's postulates or even the modified Rivers postulates. So what is that about? Koch's postulates are: 1. The microorganism must be identified in all individuals affected by the disease, but not in healthy individuals. 2. The microorganism can be isolated from the diseased individual and grown in culture. 3. When introduced into a healthy individual, the cultured microorganism must cause disease. 4. The microorganism must then be re-isolated from the experimental host and found to be identical to the original microorganism. Rivers' postulates were proposed by Thomas M. River in 1973 to establish the role of a specific virus as the cause of a specific disease. They're modifications of Koch's postulates, that's K-O-C-H, and they are as follows. 1. The viral agent must be found either in the host animal or plant, body fluids at the time of disease or in cells showing lesions specific to that disease. 2, the host material with the viral agent used to inoculate the healthy host, test organism, must be free of any other microorganism. 3, the viral agent obtained from the infected host must produce the specific disease in a suitable healthy host and or provide evidence of infection by inducing the formation of antibodies specific to that agent. And 4, similar material, viral particle, from the newly infected host or the test organism must then be isolated and capable of transmitting the specific disease again to other healthy hosts. Whichever set of postulates is used, SARS-CoV-2 fails the test. All claims that the SARS-CoV-2 virus has been isolated have turned out to be unsubstantiated. Meanwhile, there have been actual admissions by officials that they haven't isolated it. The chief epidemiologist of the Chinese CDC, Center for Disease Control, admitted, quote, they didn't isolate the virus. Here's the clip from his interview with NBC where he states that information.
Why has the data not been shared?
No, they didn't isolate the virus. That's the issue.
What about live animal samples?
It doesn't tell you anything if they only test positive. I do not suspect it's coming from what we originally thought.
CDC stated no quantified isolate was available. The U.S. CDC Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in its July 2020 report, CDC 2019 Novel Coronavirus 2019 nCoV Real-Time RT-PCR Diagnostic Panel, admits that it had been running PCR tests based not on actual viral isolate, an actual sample or specimen taken from an infected human, but rather, quote, stocks of, quote, transcribed RNA taken from a gene bank to, quote, mimic clinical specimen. Quote, since no quantified virus isolates of the 2019 nCoV were available for CDC to use at the time the test was developed and this study conducted, assays designed for detection of the 2019 nCoV RNA were tested with characterized stocks of in vitro transcribed full-length RNA, N-gene GenBank accession MN908947.2 of known titer RNA copies spiked into a diluent consisting of a dilutant consisting of a suspension of human A549 cells and viral transport medium VTM to mimic clinical specimen, end quote. And this is on page 43 if you want to take a look. Lots of technical jargon, so you might want to read that on your own to fully understand the science. Again, look these things up if you don't believe it. This article continues with 6 more detailed and referenced points, including that CDC admitted they made a digital virus of 30,000 base pairs using 37 actual sample base pairs. The UK, Australian, and Canadian governments couldn't produce the evidence, and with over 40 institutions worldwide unable to answer the basic question of isolation of SARS-CoV-2, you have to take a look. In conclusion, the COVID cult is a colossal fraud and superstition, according to this journalist. Chinese scientists took lung fluid samples and claimed they had discovered a novel or new virus, and the Gates Rockefeller WHO backed them up. In the WHO Novel Coronavirus 2019 nCoV Situation Report, number 1, they stated, quote, the Chinese authorities identified a new type of coronavirus, which was isolated January 7th, 2020, and on January 12th, 2020, China shared the genetic sequence of the novel coronavirus for countries to use in developing specific diagnostic kits, end quote. With all the evidence presented above, the WHO's assertions and claims seem utterly baseless. They constitute outright fraud. The world has been shut down over a lie, a coldly calculated, carefully curated lie that was simulated and war-gamed for decades in advance. The COVID cult is an irrational superstition based on nothing but in silico, theoretical, make-believe viral sequences. That according to this report. Yet, the real-world consequences for millions who have been thrown into stress, despair, poverty, joblessness, alcoholism, and suicide is anything but theoretical. The trend of people all over the world pushing back and working through the threats of viral diseases and mutations is just the tip of what's happening. Be sure to take the time to do your own research, check information, check sources, and intent or economic interest of those sources, and make your own conclusions. After all, your body is still your own, at least for the moment. And to catch this program online, visit our Facebook page. Right now, we're still on Facebook at DCTV Daily News, or also online on YouTube. They haven't kicked us off there either. Both you can follow or subscribe to easily and join in on the conversation. This is your local community TV station, so if you have something you'd like to share, contact us. The email is dcbnnews, that's for Dolores County Broadcasting Network, news, @gmail.com. Or you can call and leave me a message at 970-677-4119. Thanks for tuning in to DCTV Daily News. If you like the program, please do like and follow us on Facebook and share it with your friends and family. This has been a production of DCTV for the DCTV Daily News program out of Dove Creek, Colorado, USA. I'm Kendra Cook. Be well and keep thinking for yourself.